Hi, welcome to another edition of the Elvis Conspiracy, where we're looking at the life and the death and perhaps the life, again, of Elvis Presley. I'm Jeff Dixon, I'm your host, and we're looking at stuff that conspiracy theorists love. From the feedback that we've gotten from literally all over the world, no kidding, in this series, there are many of you who are still Elvis fans, who are still kind of wrestling through and thinking about and listening to and intrigued by some of the events surrounding the death of Elvis Presley back in 1977. Or perhaps, just maybe, it didn't happen the way that you always thought it did. In the previous episodes, you can go back and look, we were looking at one aspect of the mystery and conspiracy surrounding Elvis's death, which is the misspelled name on the tombstone that you see at Graceland. If you haven't watched those episodes, you can go back, you can actually see some of the images and realize that there's a discrepancy with how Elvis Aaron Presley is spelled on that tombstone, because it's spelled with two A's on that tombstone. And in real life, on his birth certificate and the contracts and the important documents of his life, it's spelled A-R-O-N. We're going to stop for a minute. We're going to take a step back. And we're going to look at what really is a side story that doesn't really deal with the Elvis conspiracy, but it does in some way. Now, how's that for setting the table and messing things up? Well, stay with me on this, and I'll try not to get bogged down. I probably will, and if I do, forgive me, but you can always turn it off. Anyway, intrigue is an understatement when it comes to the mysterious death of Elvis's twin, Jesse Garon. Jesse Garon is buried in an unmarked grave in the Priceville Cemetery in Tupelo, Mississippi. Elvis himself often mentioned that Jesse's death was a mystery, and he felt a sense throughout his entire life of a profound loss, which for those who follow the life and times of Elvis Presley begs the question, why did Elvis, after making his fortune and becoming famous, never put a memorial for his deceased twin brother at the Priceville Cemetery? If it were for security reasons, being afraid of body nappers, for example, then that reasoning might be part of what carried over to his mother's grave, the original grave at the Forest Hill Cemetery in Memphis, where an elaborate memorial was erected in her honor. That memorial is the one that you saw them carrying the body of Elvis Presley into after Elvis died and his funeral procession made its way through Memphis. That was where Elvis was originally laid to rest. See, the avenue of thought among conspiracy theorists is that no one is actually buried at Graceland. That in real life, Elvis's grandmother, father, and mother are all still in that mausoleum, where it is reported that a sealed-off room exists. Its door is several inches above ground, but no one can peek beneath. And because of that, there is that belief that this was done as a diversionary tactic to keep people from trying to take the bodies of the Presley family. This was the best way to secure them. Everyone knows they're buried at Graceland, when in fact their bodies are buried there. It also would then indicate that Elvis wasn't buried at Graceland, especially if he hadn't really died. And it is reported by those who have been to that Forest Hill Cemetery in Memphis that on Mother's Day and on August 14th every year, that is the day that Gladys Presley died, there is a single rose that is placed there at that mausoleum. It doesn't mean anything except someone is placing a rose there on Mother's Day and on Elvis's mother's birthday. And it doesn't prove that Elvis is alive, and it doesn't prove anything except that there's just something odd about why someone would place a rose on that day at an empty mausoleum, because all the bodies were moved out of there and moved back to Graceland. Fan sites will tell you that Elvis loved his mother very much and always said that he would be buried beside her. And so when people look at the graves at Graceland, they ask the question, why is he buried between his father and grandmother? That wasn't Elvis's stated wishes, and yet that's the layout of that memorial garden there at Graceland. Elvis often said, I'll never be able to let my mom go. She is in my heart, and she always will be. And so we have this family that in death has had to struggle to keep their privacy private, and we're talking about it. So again, we're probably feeding right into that. But it also then begs the questions as to why were things done in this way. Elvis never put up a memorial for his brother. If they were afraid of body nappers, kidnappers, someone stealing that body, that would make sense. Moving the bodies out of the mausoleum to Graceland would make sense. Or is it enough to make it look like you've moved the bodies out of the mausoleum and left them there, but yet the whole world believes they're at Graceland? And they believe that Elvis is at Graceland when there's nobody there at all. Conspiracy theorists still speculate that there are bodies that are there in that mausoleum at the Forest Hill Cemetery. That's where the Presley family is really buried. However, they also believe that Elvis is not buried there because he did not die back in 77. Nothing about what we just covered is any evidence of any conspiracy. It's just more weirdness on top of the weirdness on top of the weirdness of this whole gravestone where everybody's buried kind of controversy. It's the kind of stuff that will stir up conspiracy theorists and get everybody upset and angry. And those that want to believe that he's gone will say, why do you mess with this kind of stuff? And others that want to say, yeah, I knew it. I knew he wasn't dead. Yeah, we'll see. But that is just one of the many things that feed into the conspiracy. And so we're going to move away from the gravestone and the misspelled name and the mystery of Jesse Garon. And we're going to quit asking the question because we don't have an answer for you as to where the bodies might really be buried. So we're going to move on to some other things that might either fuel the fire or convince you that Elvis really did leave the building in August of 77. And so until next time, I'm Jeff Dixon. We'll continue to look and unpack the Elvis conspiracy and let you decide whether we're talking about the life, the death, and maybe the life of Elvis Presley.